6 years ago, I decided to teach myself how to code. The goal initially was to, build a secondary revenue stream with iOS apps. 3 years later, I was able to quit my job and dedicate myself fully to this business. It's now been 3 years that I'm completely full-time on this. Haven't had a job, haven't had a normal client, just been focusing completely on my own product. Throughout the years, I've kind of shared daily updates on my Instagram, and it really kept me accountable, kept me motivated to keep pushing, and seeing some of you guys out there trying to do the same inspired me to try and give back and answer questions when I can. And today this video is about basically an Ask Me Anything in 2021. I've asked some of my Insta friends to ask me some questions, and I'm going to spend the next few minutes answering them from Portugal, where we're having a week off of holidays, where I'm trying not to work too hard. So let's get into it. I'll split this in 3 parts. We'll start with the journey. So starting from back in 2015, you guys had specific questions on what happened since then, and I'll get into the current lifestyle, so what it's like to be an indie iOS developer today. And finally, I'll give pro tips on specific aspects of what it's like to work alone today on iOS apps. Let's start with the first question from Let Us Code It on Instagram, who asked me how much time did it take for me to learn iOS development and to publish my first app. In short, I wrote my first line of Swift in February of 2015. I just basically took a few programming course online, mostly on Udemy, and it took about 6 months, I think, to get my first app on the store. I decided to start working on it as soon as I had a minimum understanding of the overall framework, and it didn't look like much. It was very simple, badly coded probably, but it did the job and it worked. So yeah, about 5-6 months, I would say. The next question comes from Michaela. We've had tons of super interesting chats on Instagram, so I'm really glad to get the questions from her. She's asking me what's the favorite app I've built, or the app I had the most fun building. And here, of course, I have to say YT Tracker. I mean, this is the app that helped me become indie full-time. 3 years later to this day, I still have tons of ideas of features I want to build. It feels like this product is unlimited in the scope of things I can do with it. So that's always super exciting. Now, it doesn't mean I had no fun building other things that didn't work. I remember building an app that was helping people generate gradients in a completely new way. At the time, I was super excited to build it. It was super helpful for me personally when I designed my own apps. So it was kind of a mini design tool. It never went anywhere. It never made much revenue. It doesn't mean I didn't have fun building it. So I think having fun is one of the most important things you can do when you build products, and yeah, that's why I always try new things. Even though I have my main products, I constantly think about new ideas and new products, and sometimes I give them a go, and if they don't work, that's okay, but that's part of the journey. We've got a question from Conrad, who asked me if from the very beginning, if I pushed really hard in the time investment I made into my learning journey, or if I just went with it normally without too much pressure, just to see how it went. And I can honestly say that because I wanted this to work so much, I did put in a lot of work at the beginning, and it was very intense. I had a full-time job, and I would say for the first 3 months it was almost all my evenings, most of my weekends, sometimes the mornings, like early mornings before work, and I was trying to put as many hours as I could just to learn faster and make sure I would show myself that, okay, I'm making progress, it's worth it. Because if you drag it too long before showing yourself that yes, you're making progress, then it's very hard, and there's a higher chance that you're like, okay, well, it's not going anywhere, might as well give up. And this is what you don't want to get to. This is the risk, because if you give up, nothing happens. And so for me, I think that was one of the keys that put me on the right direction, was to start fast and start really intense. And I have good memories of it, of late nights and early mornings and things, but I would see myself making progress. So if you get started, yeah, prepare yourself to have enough time to invest, and you'll have to know to say no to other things. I remember saying no to parties. I remember saying no to meetups, after work drinks, just because I had this goal in mind, and it was important enough to make these sacrifices. So next we have a question from Bruno and James, and they're asking about the moment I decided to go full-time indie, and if it was easy to understand it was the right time, or what made me understand it was the right moment. And so for me it came very naturally, but there were very personal reasons plugged into this whole thing, and the decision that it was at the right moment. In short, in 2017 I joined Google. I was still living in London full time. In 2018 my mother was very sick, and I had to decide to go back home to France, where my family lived at the time, and just help out and be there to care for her on a daily basis. So I negotiated, and we kind of agreed on this, that they would let me work from France, and I would be able to be with my mom and at the same time do my work. Unfortunately, my mom passed away in August of that year. By then my now wife was living in Barcelona. Google wanted me back to London. It was all a mess in terms of geographical logistics. So I decided that it was time to leave the UK for good, join my girlfriend, now wife, in Barcelona. And that's where I decided to go full-time indie, basically. Okay, next we have a questions from the guys behind Machinery Agency. I think they're from Croatia. I don't exactly know their name, but we've had a few chats on Instagram as well. And they're asking if I had any downs during my journey so far, and if so, how did I overcome them? And of course, you don't have a journey like this without downs. Like it's actually only highs and only lows. There's not one day which is like, man, it's just a normal day. So I've definitely had my loads of downs. I can remember one in particular where in 2019 YouTube decided to shut down my API access for YT Tracker, which basically meant that the app was completely unusable. And they did that because I had requested more quota. The API for YouTube works with quota basically, and when you grow you need more quota, and I was growing, so I needed more quota, so I requested more quota, and that triggers a bunch of things inside Google that I was not aware of, including an engineering review where the team at YouTube checks what you're doing with your app and what data you use, and all the kind of things that they could be okay or not okay with. And without any notice, they basically were not happy with one of the features I had built, and they shut down the entire API key, which meant I had zero quota, which meant the app was not functioning at all. And I had to battle for about 6 weeks to get everything back up, negotiating with the YouTube engineering team, leveraging contacts I still had at Google to try and plead my case, and that they would understand I'm just a nice guy trying to build a cool product. That was probably the lowest point in my journey so far, because everything was going really well. The app was growing, revenue was up, and suddenly everything shuts down. People don't understand what's going on. I have to explain it's not really my fault, even though I'm behind the product. And people have paid for it, and they're like, it's not working, and they want refunds, and it was kind of all a mess. And I think the moral here for me was that not giving up was the key. I mean, I could have said, well, that's it, that's my business killed, and I'm going back to a normal job. But I didn't give up, and I leveraged every single possible options I had to try and fix it. And that included going, like, begging friends at Google, that included recording videos of myself, basically telling, hey, that's just me, one guy building a product. I'm not doing anything nasty with data. I'm not doing anything that goes against privacy or anything like this. And in the end it worked. So it took the time it took, but I think the main attitude was don't give up. Never give up. If it's worth it, there's always a solution somewhere. You just need to keep pushing and find all the solutions that you think will work and might not, until you find one that does. Since this situation happened, I've applied the same mindset to many other problems that were maybe smaller, but you know, not giving up is always gonna lead you to new things you can try. So one of them will work at some point. That's my attitude towards anything these days. Okay, so now we got a questions from Matt Glover from the UK. Thanks for the question, Matt, and there's another one after that I think people will enjoy as well. Matt's asking what's been my highest high and my biggest learning opportunity so far in this journey. I think my highest high was the day I was finally able to start saving money again. So when I quit my job, of course it was a financial hit. I was living on my savings for a while, trying to get the apps to grow to a point where they would pay the bill first, and then you start saving money again, and you see that it suddenly starts to work, and you can start to see this being a full-time thing for a while. And that was really a moment where we did a big celebration with my wife. On a monthly basis, we track our net worth just to see how we're doing and if we are saving money and all these things. And for the entire year where I'm trying to fight hard to get that business up and running, you see that it's flat or going down a little bit because she has a normal job with a stable salary, so that was very helpful. But when we see that graph, that joint graph going back up slowly, that's when I realized that, okay, this was a serious business and I could make a living out of this. And I remember that was a really amazing day to see this happening. So now my biggest learning opportunity, I like the way you frame learning opportunity, because it's always about learning. When there are setbacks, when there are some things that don't go the way you'd like to, it's always about learning. So I really like the way that was phrased. For me, I understood over the years that it's never really over. Even when you reach a level, whether it's financially or happiness or whatever, where you're comfortable and happy and everything is going well, and you think that is it. I can stay at this level forever and I'll be good. It's never really ever over. There's always gonna be something that can happen that you don't control. Like, I don't know, a new competitor, market changes, Apple releasing something, Apple changing their AppStore algorithm, an API that breaks, YouTube coming in your way and trying to shut your business down. A bunch of different things can happen. And once you understand that and accept that, I think you're good, because there's going to be challenges ahead. You've overcome challenges before, and you've done the learnings for that, and you can apply it later to whatever comes in your way. So I think once I understood this, I was a lot more peaceful about whatever happens next. I know I'll find solutions, and if it's really that bad, then I'll find something else, but I'll find something to keep going. So yeah. Now we got another question from Matt, who asked me if I could rewind the clock, if I would do the same choice again as a career choice to be full-time indie developer. And the answer simply is 1,000,000 times yes. I mean, it's just amazing, the freedom it grants me. You get to work on what you want, when you want, from where you want, and however long you want. I mean, it feels so unique, and I'm incredibly grateful to have the chance to do this. So I don't see myself going back to a 9 to 5 unless I need to financially, or unless I don't need to worry about money anymore and I just want to join a company because I miss working with people, which is something that sometimes I do. Then maybe that company would have so many values I share and so many things that they're trying to do that I value a lot, that maybe it would be worth bringing some of the constraints that I don't have today back in my life. But I don't see this happening anytime soon. I mean, I'm enjoying way too much what I do. It doesn't even feel like work. So for now, I'm gonna keep it that way, and I would do it again 1,000,000 times. So next, we've got a question from Swapnil, who's asking me to compare my life from when I was an employee with my life as an indie dev in terms of money, freedom, and challenges. So in terms of money, well, of course, it's a lot less stable than before. As an employee, you get a nice, stable paycheck every month. As an independent developer, you run your own business, so you have good months, you have bad months, you have financial struggles sometimes it's great and you don't know what's going on. So it's definitely a lot less stable, but the positive side is that it's completely unlimited. You can build as many products as you can and sell them to thousands of people, so you're not capped as you would be with normal salaried contract, which is something that I love. In terms of freedom, well, this is where the difference is the biggest, because freedom is completely absolute. Providing you make enough to pay the bills, you're basically free 100% of your time. Unlimited holidays, you work whenever you want, wherever you want. Every day can be a Saturday. You start to love Mondays and they just look like Fridays. So all this doesn't matter anymore. So freedom is definitely something that that is hugely improved when you go completely solo. And finally, in terms of challenges, well, I have to say being indie dev is a lot more challenging for me than when I was employed, because everything is on you, nothing gets done without you working, and sometimes you don't know what you're doing. Actually, most of the time I don't know what I'm doing, and you have to try things and not be scared to test and fail and learn. And this sometimes can be intimidating. It gets better with years, but still, sometimes you're not going to be comfortable and you're going to have to do things that you've never done before. And it can be scary, and this is, way more challenging, at least in my opinion, than when I had a job. A job was challenging sometimes, it could be stressful sometimes. But at the end of the day, you had colleagues, you had a boss. If you're struggling, you had somebody to turn to and ask for help. Here it's a lot different. If you want to go full-time indie, you got to be ready to jump into problems and not be scared to test things and fail a lot to learn a lot. So next we have a question about the biggest pro and the biggest con of being an independent developer. Might be something I've said before here, but the biggest pro for me is clearly the freedom that it grants you. I never thought this would be something I could reach someday, and this for me is still mind-blowing to this day, 3 years later. Sometimes it's still hard to realize that this is what I do for a living. The biggest con though is that everything is running always, and you're the only one who can fix problems. So that's why when I go anywhere, for example here we're in Portugal where we're spending a bit of holiday, I have all my gear with me because I never know what can go wrong, if something is going to go wrong. That is something that can be annoying at times, because you never really know when problems like this are going to hit, or if it's going to completely ruin your time off. My wife is fully employed, so when we take time off, it's her holidays, and she doesn't have limited holidays, so we need to make sure we enjoy them. And there's been time where some things happen and you got to fix it, and it burns 1 or 2 days out of your 7 days holiday. And that's the less fun part of the job. You never know when you're going to be needed back at your desk. So next we've got a question from iOS Dev, who's asking if I have any regrets so far, looking back at the last few years. And I don't think I have any. I mean, if I look at my career from back when I graduated to today, I feel like every step had meaning. I graduated in business. My master's degree is not something I use every day, but I think developed some kind of business mindset that is quite useful in what I do today. Then I failed at a startup in 2014, and I realized that technical skills were needed to understand product development, what users needed in apps and things like this. So that failure taught me a lot. And then I moved to London. I learned English a lot better, and I think that opened up a whole new world of possibilities in terms of things I could learn from, people I could talk to. My first job was a very little salary, and I realized that, okay, if I wanted a better life, I needed something better than this. Pushed me to push for raises and for different things, but even that I realized was too slow. So that pushed me into side projects and teaching myself how to code. Then I got hired by Google, so I got a chance to taste what it's like to work for a tech giant. I met incredible people and I learned a lot from there. It was also related to the mobile industry, so that naturally helped me towards what I do today. I don't have any regrets. Maybe I would have started earlier in teaching myself how to program. Again, I don't know if that would have made a difference. I don't think I would have any regrets, and I would do the exact same thing probably. Okay, next we're getting into the pro tips. We've got a first question from PR Zemek. I don't know if I pronounce your name properly. He's asking about book recommendation for learning SwiftUI. So I've basically done next to no work with SwiftUI so far. The only thing I've done was a widget app, and I basically learned on the fly with hacking with Swift, and I took the course from Sean Allen. These two things were quite useful for a discovery, let's say, but to get super proficient with it, I'm not there yet myself, so I'll have to dig deeper when I get to that at some point, but most of my apps are 100% UI kit. So I'll put the links of what I've used in the description, but I'm not the best person to recommend books at this stage. So a bit of a change of scenery. We've got the next question coming from Manley, who's asking about MVPs and if I have any advice on publishing MVPs and monetizing MVPs. These days my golden rule is to apply the 1 month rule. The moment I start working on it, and by this I don't mean writing the first line of code or designing the first screen, When I say working on it, I mean thinking about it. The moment I decide that something is serious enough that I'm gonna build and ship, I start sketching things on paper, writing down feature lists, things like that. That is what I mean by starting to work on something. And for me, the moment I start doing this, I set a countdown of 1 month, and after this month it has to be on the AppStore, or I fail to my own golden rule, which sometimes happen, but generally I try to stick to that. And the way I do it is mostly brainstorming all the features possible first. At this stage there's no limit, anything can go on the list. Crazy ideas, things that might not even be feasible, anything, there's no stupid ideas at this point. The step 2 is to shrink that list of features to the core stuff, the things I will put in the MVP, in the V1. And so that's where you have to be super critical with your own work and basically tell no to yourself quite a lot, because you will want to build the cool things, you will want to build the complex things, but you have 1 month. And so in 1 month you cannot do everything, and you have to take shortcuts wherever you can and cut corners. And so that's phase 2, is to shrink that list of features to really what's critical and what the app cannot work without. Once you have this list, you can start thinking about the screens and how you're going to organize the features in the app. That should be super fast. Generally I do this in half an hour, 1 hour. I have my features and I just say, okay, on this screen there will be this, on this screen there will be this, and I can do this even on paper, on the iPad, or it's very simple. Then I start designing. I don't design everything. If I know exactly in my head how things are gonna look like, there are screens I don't design. For example, setting screens I don't design. Paywalls, I reuse them from one app to the other, so that I don't redesign. Contact form, things like that, I reuse a bunch of things from previous projects. So I try to limit as much as I can the amount of new work I do. And of course, the new features and things that are specific to that app, you have to kind of think a bit more and design properly. And then you start building, and again for the programming part, I try to reuse as much code as possible from other apps. I have like folders with settings, and I plug this into the new app, and it's almost like modules that I can reuse. Paywalls, monetization layer, there's a bunch of things I try to reuse, and that saves a lot of time. When you have only 1 month, you have to do things like that. And then, well, of course you have to think a bit about marketing and about the App Store, do your keyword research. ASO is super important, and so I always allocate time for this. Doesn't have to be weeks, because you only have 4 weeks anyway, but just a couple days at least where you think about keywords, what goes into your title, subtitle, how you're going to market your app. And then screenshot design is also important to get people to download the app. That's what they're going to look at, and they need to be convinced by looking at these things. And once you're done with this, you're ready to ship pretty much. Now, in terms of monetizing, I'm not sold on one strategy for sure, because back in the days I used to monetize my apps immediately. Sometimes it works, sometimes it works a bit less, sometimes it doesn't work at all. But I don't think that depends on whether it's monetized or not. Your app concept is going to make or break the idea, so that's one thing you can't really control 100% of the time. Lately I've tried to ship the apps for free completely and monetize later if I see some traction. I don't know for sure if it's working better or not, because I haven't had one major success with this strategy yet. I had mild successes, so apps that are getting a few downloads per day, and then you monetize and you make a little money per day, but it's nothing groundbreaking. So I don't know if Apple favors apps that are monetized already in their algorithm. I don't know for sure. I'm still exploring this. If nothing, that shows you that you can't rely on one thing somebody tells you. You have to try for yourself, and that's what I've been doing for years. And sometimes I try things and it works, sometimes I try things and it doesn't work at all. So if nothing, that's a lesson. Just keep trying and don't think you found something that will work forever. You have to constantly explore new possibilities and see what will work for you, for your app, for your audience. Some people react better to different things. So the next question comes from Mike Budd, and he's asking me about UI design and how I got better at it. And the sad truth is that it's pretty much years of practice, and I don't think I'm a very good designer still. But every time I design something new, I try to make it a little better than the previous thing. And to do this, I generally look up designs online, whether it is Pinterest, Dribble, there's some hashtags on Instagram where you see a bunch of nice designs. I just try to apply some of what I see in my own design. Doesn't mean copying, it really means taking inspiration from a few different places, and you do a mix match of things and you make it your own. And that's what basically all designers do, I think. I've tried to do this for many years now, and slowly over time you get better, and I don't think you even realize that you get better. And you only do that when you look back at your work from years ago. Like if I look at the first app I shipped and the design that was there, it looked horrible. My wireframes from today look better than the design I shipped on my first app, but that's completely okay. You just need to know that it's the process. One thing I found that was helpful was to do mood boards. Basically, when I start designing something I've never designed before, I look up things online on different sites and I screenshot different things I like, and I drop this into a random artboard on Sketch or Figma. It doesn't need to be organized, it's just like a list of things you find pretty. And then on one screen you put this, and when you start designing on another screen, I do my own work there. And I look up and see, okay, this looks nice, where could I apply something like that? Again, not copying, but trying to see where things fit in your own design. And as you design and you fine-tune things, I look at the details of what other designers do, whether it is shadows or radius, color choices and palettes and different things. And I try to understand how they did it and why it looks nice there and why it doesn't look nice on my thing. And sometimes it is simple things like using 3 fonts instead of 2, or the font and the weight hierarchy in the font is a bit weird on my side, and I understand that they do it differently, and I tweak a few things, and slowly you get better. But it's not a rewarding process because it's very long and you never really realize when you make progress. So you have to trust that it will work and keep trying to improve slowly over time. Okay, next we've got a question about time management and how I organize myself there. The short answer is I really don't have a good system yet in terms of time management, and I think that's on purpose because I work pretty much in bursts. There are weeks where I'm not super productive and there are weeks where I'm mega productive. I always kind of have a goal in mind, but I don't set deadlines per se. I know where I'm working towards, but I think it's a lot different when you start being full-time compared to when you are considering this as a side project and actively working to become full-time. Because I remember when I had a full-time job, my time was very limited. I had my 8 hours a day or sometimes more dedicated to my work, and then I had a few hours in the evening and then my weekends where I had to focus as much as I could to make sure the work on the side project would get done. And then I had to properly plan and say, okay, tonight I'll have a few hours. I know I might be tired, but I'll try to achieve this. Or I'll wake up early this morning and I'll try to achieve that. And at that point I needed a lot more focus, and the way I would do it then is think the day before about what I'll try to achieve the next day, and I would always try to work on a day-to-day basis like this. Since I've been full-time, it's mostly been mid-term planning, so I have, okay, this is the big next feature I'm working towards, and then I know this is my current objective, and if it takes a week or 3 weeks, that's okay. It goes in the next update, and then I break this down into smaller tasks I can achieve every day, and I track everything in Notion, but I don't set deadlines to tasks, so that's probably the biggest difference, I would say. So now let's talk about marketing. We've got a great question from Gustavo, and he's asking what are the best advice I can give in terms of marketing for indie devs. The reality is that we have to handle everything, right? Design, code, marketing, everything is on us, and that really puts a huge constraint on time. When you know, you try to apply the 1 month rule and you start working on something, some people spend months preparing a marketing plan. We don't have that, so we have to go at the most impactful with the least amount of time invested. The way I try to do this is by focusing on 2 things. First is ASO, so it stands for AppStore Search Optimization, and what it means basically is to try and do some keyword research, Find a good brand name, find good keywords to put in your title and subtitle. Try to design appealing screenshots, because that's what's going to convince people to download your app. Work on a nice looking app icon, things like this. So anything related to the metadata going to play a role in the way your app ranks. And if it's done properly, it can be a super great marketing technique. If it's done not at all or poorly, then you don't leverage something that could be leveraged, and that really can impact the way your app is going to perform. So that's one thing I always try to spend some time on, see what kind of volume each keyword is getting, see what my competitors are ranking for, see where I can be positioned to get some downloads, basically. And then the other thing is more about the mindset and how I develop the product itself. So generally I try to engineer the marketing inside the product. And by this I mean trying to incentivize people to create content from inside the app, or share the app, or leave a review or rating. This is all going to play in your marketing, and often that can help. Like, for example, in some of my apps I have social media templates where people can generate content and then share this on their social media to promote their YouTube videos, for example. If people are not on the premium plan, then there's a watermark on these things. Indirectly, it's going to drive traffic back to my app, and I think that that can amplify your brand and help bring visibility on your app. So this is something I always try to do in some way. It doesn't work for everything, of course, but I think it's more of a mindset to have, to try and see how you could use your existing users to drive more users. You basically build something that will automatically get your marketing done for you, at least part of it, because then you know it's running, and it's not you spending more and more time to get that exposure, because it's done by your users. So that's the two main things I always try to put in any of my launches and any of my products. And of course there's tons of other ways, but that's more specific to each app and whether you have a marketing budget or not. Search ads is great for that, but of course you've got to spend money to get money. So that's something that maybe doesn't apply to everyone, and that's something I was not doing when I started, because at first you're trying to get your stuff off the ground, and then you can slowly start reinvesting, but one step at a time. The first thing is to get the initial traction. That's the most important. And finally, last but not least, and that's something many of you have been asking, you're all super curious to know what advice I would give myself if I was to start from scratch today with the knowledge I have. There's two parts, of course, because I knew nothing about programming. There's the learning part, and then there's the developing a business part, and we'll come to this one next. But in terms of learning, I think I would pretty much do the same as what I've done. I didn't go for a degree, I didn't go for a bootcamp. I just went online, looked for nice resources, and taught myself, basically. And I think that was a lot faster than anything else I could have done. So I would probably redo that. Of course, the resources I've used back then are obsolete, and there are new ones today. But I would basically pick a couple courses, maybe a book. The Beginner Range is one I always recommend, because it's always super well done. And I would teach myself for the first 1 or 2 months maybe. And then I would pick not one, but several ideas before even starting to work on the first one. And why I say this is because it's a lot easier to just churn products if you don't fall in love with one. I didn't fall in love with my first app idea because it was not even something I was passionate about, but that's the only idea I had. And so all my energy went into it, no matter if it was working, if it was getting any traction. It was kind of the wrong approach. And so by having, let's say, 2 or 3 ideas that are simple, that you say, okay, this is the 3 apps I will ship first, then you just churn them. You just do the 1 month thing. You do 1 app 1 month, the next month you ship another one, the next month you ship another one. And then, okay, you look back at your analytics and you say, okay, what's working, what's not working? Where do I put my energy next? And that's something I haven't done. And I spent the first 2 years of me learning to code working on the same app, which went nowhere. And so that's something I would do very differently in terms of business. For the learning part, it was okay to use the same courses and a couple books, and it got me started. And I think I started fast enough on my first product, so that was also okay. but it was iterating on different products that I didn't do properly. So I would definitely build a few things and then see what sticks, and then not be scared to test many things. I was so stuck on my pricing is this, I'm not going to change it. My features are that, and I'm not going to change it. And I'm dedicated to work on this app, and I'm going to work on it until it works. And this is the wrong approach. If an app doesn't work, after a while you have to give up and move on to the next one. And I did this only by chance because I found a next idea that somehow ended up working. But for all I know, I could be stuck on the same product today and be nowhere. So don't get stuck on the same product for too long. If you don't see it working, and by working I mean generating revenue, move on to the next thing after a while. But that's why having several products running at the same time is quite helpful, because you never know which one's going to work. So try a few things to get higher chance of success, basically. That's what I haven't done, and if I was to start again today, I would definitely do that, because it could have saved me 2 years. That's a lot, so try that. It's worth it. Well, that's it. I'm back home in Switzerland. The holidays are over. It's time to get back to work. If you have more questions, as always, I'm more than happy to answer them. You can drop a comment below. And if you like this video and you want to see more of what it's like to be an independent developer these days, just give the channel a like and a subscribe. I would really appreciate it. Thank you and see you soon.